Hey everybody, it's Mr. Oaks again. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to write an equation when we are given either a graph, a situation, or even a table. Now, writing an equation can sometimes be confusing, so what I try to do is I give my students a template. Now the important thing when we are writing an equation, especially ones that are in slope-intercept form, which is usually the way you're going to find it. There are other ways. There's point slope, and other like what we call standard form. But the one we usually are used to seeing is what's known as slope-intercept form. And in order for us to write an equation that's in slope-intercept form, we need the slope and the y-intercept. Now, of those two, usually the y-intercept is going to be the easier of the two things to find, especially when we're given a graph. So what I have here is I have a graph with a line, and we're going to write an equation. And as I said, I like to give my students a template. So what they hear about 1,000 times throughout the year, once we start learning about equations and especially writing equations, is this template here. M equals B equals Y equals MX plus B, Y equals blank X plus blank. So basically all we need to find are the slope and the y-intercept, and then we plug them in to where they're supposed to go. So the slope is M. That's the number that's before the X variable. So once we find our slope, we just put it in front of the blank, in the blank that's in front of the X. The y-intercept is whatever we are adding or subtracting. Now I always leave it as a plus, but that way if the y-intercept is negative, then this is going to change. We have a plus and negative, and as we know, a plus and negative is just a negative or subtraction. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to find is always the easiest thing. I'm going to figure out what the y-intercept is. And I find that simply enough by looking at the y-axis and seeing where the line crosses the y-axis. So when I look at this, I notice that it is crossing at the point 0, 3. Now the y-intercept is the y value of that point, the 3. So all I'm going to do is simply write a 3 here, so B equals 3. And then under where the B is, that blank, I'm going to put my 3. So already I've got part of my equation done here. Now comes the thing that is usually a little bit more tricky, is basically finding the slope. Now, when I have a graph, I have multiple ways I could figure this out. I could do the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. I usually tell my students that if you have 2 points, if you're given 2 points, but you don't have a graph, then you should do the slope formula. In this case, when I have a graph in front of me, I have a graph line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use rise over run, which really is the slope formula, but now I'm just using counting. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find 2 good points. And a good point is wherever the line crosses the grid, where a vertical line of the grid and a horizontal line of the grid cross. I'm always going to first look to see, do I have any intercepts? Do I have a y-intercept? And do I have an x-intercept? X-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis. Very inventive when they came up with these names. So the first thing I notice is, well, I got a y-intercept, 0, 3. So that's going to be my first point. Then I'm going to look, does this line cross the x-axis? Yeah, it does. It crosses over here at 4, 0. 4, 0. That 4 kind of looks like a y. Oh well. And then I'm just going to kind of go, well, going this way, this way. Now the first thing I notice is that this line, as I look from it left to right, it's angling down. A line that angles down from left to right is a negative slope. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put up here, I'm going to put a negative. I'm also going to put a line for a fraction, because most of the time we're going to think of our slope as a fraction. Even if it's a whole number, I want it to be a fraction because the numerator is telling us how much we're moving up or down. I did that completely the opposite way, up or down. And the denominator is telling us how much we're going to the right. Okay? So when I look at this, first thing I'm going to do, I notice it's going down, so I'm going to see it's going 1, 2, it's going 3 down. So I'm going to put a 3 in my numerator. And then my denominator is going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going 4 to the right. So my denominator is a 4. So now all I'm going to do is take that fraction that we have there, and I'm going to write it in this space right here. Negative 3 over 4. I tell my students it's good to have a clean version of the equation, because this is okay, all right? But sometimes that line, the lines, people get a little confused by it, especially if the y-intercept is negative, you have the plus negative. That can look a little not nice. So what I do is I rewrite it. And simply my equation for this line is y equals our negative 3 over 4x plus 3. And there we go. We have our equation for this line. Okay? So that's for a graph. Not too bad. Again, if the y-intercept kind of falls in between, that can be a problem. If our slope, we don't really see many nice points, that can be an issue. So there's always issues we can run into, but overall, not too bad. So then we come to a situation, or basically a written problem. No graph here, and of course they're not going to give us the equation because that's what we're looking for. So first off, we're going to read it. Tickets to a basketball game cost $18 each, and parking costs $12. Write an equation for the line that represents the cost of attending a game. So the first thing I notice, the very first thing I see, write an equation. As soon as I see that, I'm going to write my template. M equals, B equals, Y equals mx plus b, y equals blank x plus blank. Now, they don't tell us right away, oh, well, this is going to be the slope and this is going to be the y-intercept. So we have to figure that out for ourselves. The thing we want to remember is that a slope is something that's going to repeat. It's going to change based on having more things. Whereas the y-intercept, that happens once. It's only going to happen once, and usually it's going to happen in the beginning. So when I look at this, tickets to a basketball game cost $18 each. That each, that word each, tells me that this 18 is going to change. It's going to be 18 for one ticket, then 2 times 18 for 2 tickets, 3 times 18 for 3 tickets, and so on. So this $18 each, that's our slope. So things like each, per mile, per item, anything that's basically per, P-E-R, is going to be our slope. And if we can say, well, this is repeating, but this is only happening once, then we can figure out, well, this is the slope because it's repeating, and this is the y-intercept because it's only happening once. So per week, per hour, per mile, per day, per item, things like that, per person. Those are the things that tell us this is our slope. So m equals 18. Here's m, directly underneath it, 18. So that only leaves one thing for the y-intercept. Parking costs $12. And if you stop and think about it, when you go to a game, that's the first thing you have to do. You have to pay parking. And it only happens once. So usually some type of entrance fee is usually going to be the y-intercept because it's only happening once. All right, you're going in and you're paying that once. So our y-intercept is 12. I put it here. And there's my equation. Y equals 18x plus 12. So that's the equation that tells us how much is it going to cost to attend a game. If I go by myself, 18 times 1 plus $12 for parking. If I go with 5 friends, 18 times 5 plus $12 for parking. Because it doesn't matter. If I got 5 people in my car, we're only paying for one car. Lastly, we have a table. Now, a table, well, just like anything, it can either be really easy or not so much. Really easy tables will give you your y-intercept, and you will be able to tell the slope very easily. Other ones, not so much. This one, not so much. I didn't want to do an easy one. An easy one, I would have, in order for me to figure out the y-intercept, I would always look for, do I have an x value of 0? If I'm given an x value of 0, whatever the y value is, that's my y-intercept. No 0. So in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is I need to figure out what the slope is. Okay? Because I need to figure out, is this proportional? Because if it's proportional, then I know my y-intercept is 0. Simple as that. If it's not proportional, well, then I got to do a little work. But I need to write an equation for this, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write my template. M equals B equals Y equals MX plus B. Oop, hit something back there. Y equals blank X plus blank. Okay? So, like I said, my y-intercept, not there. But, let me see. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to kind of find the difference between each thing. You know, each x value, each y value. One of the things I can do is I can kind of look and go, okay, well, if I do y divided by x, do I get the same thing every time? So 36 divided by 4, well, that's 9. 56 divided by 6, that's not 9. That's 9 1/3. That's 9.3 repeating. Now, that doesn't work. And as I go along, I'm going to notice 86 divided by 9, that's not 9. 146 divided by 15, that's not 9. And that's not 9. So this isn't proportional. So I don't get an easy y-intercept. I don't get to be like, it's 0. I have to figure it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to say, well, I notice that this is increasing, my x is increasing, and my y's are increasing. So that tells me that my slope is positive because they're both doing the same thing. So let's take a look. So 4 to 6 is 2. 6 to 9 is 3. 9 to 15, that's 6. And 15 to 20, that's 5. Even that's not nice. Whoa. Okay. Let's try along the bottom. 36 to 56, that's 20. 56 to 86 is 30. 86 to 46 is 60. 146 to 196 is 50. So what I can do now is I can just take one of those pairings and I can use it. So I got the 20 and the 2. Again, I'm going to do the change in y over the change in x because that's how we find the slope. It's the change in y over the change in x. So this change in y is 20. The change in x is 2. So that tells me that my slope is 10. Beautiful. I'm going to write that right there. So I'm going to put this over 1 because that's important. Because here's the thing. I need to get back to 0. In order for me to do that, I have to take away 4. So I'm doing 4 1s going backwards. All right, 1, minus 1, minus 1 because that's 3. Minus 1 is 2. Another minus 1 is 1. Another minus 1 brings me back to 0. So I'm going back 4 times. And you notice I did boom, boom, boom. I don't like that. But stop and think about it. I'm going, well, I did 4 1s. So if I have my slope of 10 over 1, and I did the 1s 4 times, I can do the 10 4 times. So for every 4 I go back, I'm going back 40 this way. So I have to do 36 minus 40. I'm taking away more than I have. Well, that means that my y-intercept is a negative 4. Ah, okay. So negative 4. So I'm going to write my negative 4 here. And here we run into that problem of I have a plus and negative. So I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to rewrite it right over here. Y equals, I'm going to keep my 10x, plus a negative is the same as just minus 4. And there's my equation for the data that's in the table. Yay! I hope this video was helpful for you for solving equations. I really encourage you, whenever you have to write an equation, to do this m equals b equals y equals mx plus b, y equals blank x plus blank template. It's really helpful in organizing your work, and it makes writing the equation so much simpler because all you have to do is find the slope, the y-intercept, and plug them into where they need to go. As I said, I hope this video was helpful. I'm Mr. Oakes, and I'll see you next time.